Hello Army, welcome back to my channel. If you've been following everything coming out of Jimin's now legendary FIFA World Cup final halftime show appearance, you already know we've covered the historic performance itself, we've covered that viral IShowSpeed backstage moment, and today we're diving into a story that honestly might be one of the clearest signs yet of just how massive Jimin's cultural impact has become. Because it turns out, the custom jersey he wore during that performance became such an object of obsession among fans and casual viewers alike, that things actually got a little out of hand, to the point where the very designer behind that jersey reportedly had to step in personally and address what was happening. So let's back up and set the full context here, because there's a lot to unpack. During BTS's historic appearance at the first ever FIFA World Cup final halftime show, each member came out in individually styled outfits that blended football-inspired elements with the group's own distinct visual identity. Jimin specifically wore a white and red jersey with a baseball-inspired cut, paired with white trousers, featuring the number 7 prominently displayed, tying together silver accessories, leather textures, and utility details that connected his look with the overall aesthetic direction of the entire group's wardrobe for the show. It was a genuinely eye-catching outfit, the kind of look that immediately stands out even within a lineup that already included custom pieces for Madonna, Justin Bieber, and Syakira. And based on everything that's circulated across social media since the performance wrapped, that specific jersey absolutely captured the attention of fans in a way that went well beyond just casual appreciation. This became one of those pieces of merchandise that fans immediately wanted for themselves, wanted to own, wanted to wear to future concerts, wanted to display as a piece of history from this genuinely unprecedented moment in BTS's career. And when demand for a specific item reaches that level of intensity, especially for something that was originally created as a one-of-a-kind custom piece rather than a mass-produced retail product, you inevitably start running into exactly the kind of problem we're going to talk about today. According to reports and posts circulating on social media, the demand for a version of Jimin's specific halftime show jersey became so overwhelming that counterfeit versions of the design started popping up for sale online. Now, if you've been following along with any of the broader World Cup 2026 merchandise coverage this year, this unfortunately won't come as a huge surprise in terms of the general pattern. This entire tournament cycle has already been plagued by an absolutely massive wave of counterfeit merchandise across the board, well beyond just this one specific jersey. Authorities across multiple countries have been seizing enormous quantities of fake World Cup-related merchandise throughout this tournament, with reports of law enforcement agencies intercepting hundreds of thousands of counterfeit items worth tens of millions of dollars combined, everything from fake national team jerseys to counterfeit tickets and even fake trophies in some cases. Cybersecurity firms have also tracked a massive spike in fraudulent World Cup-related websites this year, with thousands of suspicious domains popping up specifically designed to scam eager fans looking to grab merchandise tied to this tournament. So within that already chaotic landscape of counterfeit World Cup merchandise flooding the market this year, it makes a certain kind of unfortunate sense that a piece as visually striking and instantly recognizable as Jimin's custom halftime show jersey would end up becoming a target for exactly this kind of counterfeiting. When something becomes iconic enough, when the demand for it becomes intense enough, unscrupulous sellers inevitably start trying to capitalize on that desire, producing knockoff versions and marketing them to fans who may not always be able to easily tell the difference between an authentic, officially licensed design and a cheap imitation trying to profit off that same visual appeal. Now here's where the story takes an interesting turn, because according to posts that circulated on social media, this situation escalated to the point where the actual co-director and designer behind Jimin's custom jersey felt compelled to personally address what was happening. Reports indicate that the designer, associated with the studio credited with creating this custom piece, shared content directly addressing the counterfeit versions that had emerged, essentially trying to get ahead of the situation and let fans know that these knockoff versions circulating online were not authentic, officially sanctioned products. This is honestly a pretty remarkable thing to have happened, if you really think about it. We're not talking about some mass-market retail product where a manufacturer simply has quality control procedures in place to deal with counterfeiting as a matter of standard business practice. We're talking about a custom piece created specifically for a single, historic performance, and the demand for that specific design reportedly became intense enough that the actual creative mind behind it felt the need to step in and personally speak out, trying to protect both the integrity of the original design and, honestly, protect fans themselves from potentially getting scammed by knockoff sellers trying to cash in on that demand. According to what's circulated online, the designer even reportedly shared their own photo wearing what's being described as an authorized, specially made version of the design, essentially trying to visually demonstrate what the legitimate version actually looked like compared to whatever counterfeit versions had started appearing for sale. It's a pretty clever, direct way to address a counterfeiting problem, using visual proof and direct communication with fans rather than just relying on legal takedown requests or quiet back-end enforcement that most fans would never even see happening. Let's talk for a moment about why this entire situation is honestly such a striking testament to Jimin's individual drawing power and cultural relevance right now. Think about the sheer number of custom outfits that were created for this historic halftime show. Every single performer involved, Madonna, Justin Bieber, Syakira, Burna Boy, all 7 members of BTS, had their own individually designed pieces created specifically for this occasion. And out of all of that custom-designed wardrobe, it's Jimin's specific jersey that reportedly generated enough independent demand to spawn a wave of counterfeit knockoffs significant enough that the actual designer felt compelled to publicly address it. That's a pretty remarkable data point when you think about just how much competition there was for public attention during this particular show. It also speaks to something broader about the current moment BTS finds itself in, especially coming off the back of this historic World Cup appearance. We've talked at length on this channel about just how massive this comeback era has already been for the group, from the record-breaking Erarang album, to the sprawling world tour, to now this genuinely unprecedented World Cup final halftime show appearance. And within all of that momentum, individual moments like this jersey controversy end up becoming these interesting little data points that help illustrate just how deep and specific fan enthusiasm has become around every single detail associated with the group's recent activities. It's not just enough for fans to enjoy watching the performance itself. There's this intense desire to own a piece of it, to have some tangible connection to this historic moment, and Jimin's specific jersey seems to have become one of the most sought-after physical artifacts from the entire show. Let's also spend a little time talking about why counterfeiting problems like this tend to be such a persistent issue within fan communities more broadly, especially within K-pop fandoms specifically. Anyone who's spent time around this particular corner of fandom culture knows just how much emphasis gets placed on merchandise, on collecting physical items connected to your favorite artists, whether that's official albums, photo cards, lightsticks, or in this case, apparel connected to a specific historic moment. And whenever that kind of intense collector culture combines with limited availability of an official product, you inevitably create the exact conditions that counterfeiters look to exploit. If fans want something badly enough, and the officially sanctioned version either doesn't exist as a purchasable retail item or is extremely difficult to obtain, and scrupulous sellers will always try to fill that gap with knockoff versions, hoping fans either won't notice the difference or will be willing to accept a lower quality alternative just to have something resembling the item they actually want. This is honestly a pattern we've seen play out across the entertainment industry many times before, well beyond just this specific jersey situation. Anytime a piece of custom stage wear, a specific accessory, or a particular styling choice becomes iconic enough within fan culture, it tends to inspire this whole secondary market of fan-made or unofficial reproductions, ranging from clearly labeled fan-made cosplay pieces created in good faith, all the way to intentionally deceptive counterfeit products being marketed as if they're official, licensed merchandise. The difference between those two categories matters enormously, both legally and ethically, and it's exactly that second category, the intentionally deceptive counterfeits, that seems to be what prompted this designer to speak out in the first place. Let's talk a bit about what this situation might mean for fans who are genuinely interested in owning some kind of memento connected to this historic World Cup performance, because I think this is honestly useful information regardless of the specific jersey controversy at the center of today's video. Whenever you're looking to purchase merchandise connected to a major cultural moment like this, especially in an environment where counterfeiting has already been such a documented, widespread problem throughout this entire World Cup cycle, it's worth taking a few basic precautions before handing over your money to any given seller. First, stick to verified, official retailers whenever possible. If a piece of merchandise connected to an artist or event is being sold through an official channel, whether that's an artist's own verified online store, an officially licensed retail partner, or a clearly authenticated marketplace, that's always going to be your safest bet for ensuring you're getting a legitimate product. Second, be wary of pricing that seems unusually low compared to what you'd expect for an officially licensed or custom-designed piece. Counterfeiters often try to undercut legitimate pricing significantly in order to attract buyers looking for a good deal, and if something seems too cheap to be true relative to its perceived value or rarity, that's often a red flag worth paying attention to. Third, pay close attention to details like stitching quality, tagging, and overall construction. Officially produced merchandise tends to maintain a certain baseline level of quality control, while counterfeit versions often cut corners in ways that become apparent once you're actually holding the physical product in your hands. Things like uneven stitching, incorrect labeling, or materials that just don't feel right compared to what you'd expect from a properly produced item. Let's shift back to talking about the broader implications of this whole situation for Jimin specifically, because I think it's worth sitting with just how significant it is that a single custom garment, created for a single specific performance, generated enough independent demand and cultural cachet to spawn its own little counterfeiting subplot within the broader story of this World Cup appearance. This is genuinely one of those small but telling details that ends up saying a lot about the scale of someone's individual cultural relevance at a given moment. It's easy to point to big, headline-grabbing numbers, streaming records, chart positions, ticket sales, as evidence of an artist's popularity and reach. But sometimes it's these smaller, more granular details, like a custom jersey becoming so desired that it spawns its own counterfeit market, that end up painting an even more vivid picture of just how intensely engaged people currently are with every single aspect of what someone like Jimin is doing right now. Let's also take a moment to think about this from the perspective of the actual designer and studio involved in creating this piece, because I think their reaction here is honestly a pretty smart, fan-friendly way to handle a situation like this. Rather than simply pursuing quiet legal action behind the scenes, or ignoring the counterfeiting problem entirely and hoping it would just fade away on its own, choosing to directly and publicly address the situation, sharing visual proof of what the authentic design actually looked like, represents a genuinely transparent, consumer protective approach to handling this kind of intellectual property issue. It helps protect the reputation and integrity of their original creative work, while also directly helping fans avoid getting scammed by sellers trying to profit off unauthorized reproductions of that design. Let's also touch on how this entire situation fits into the broader conversation we've already had on this channel about counterfeit merchandise being such a widespread issue throughout this particular World Cup cycle. As we've discussed before, this tournament has seen genuinely unprecedented levels of counterfeit activity across basically every category of official merchandise, from national team jerseys, to tickets, to general branded memorabilia. Authorities across multiple countries have been actively working to intercept and seize massive quantities of fake merchandise throughout the lead up to and during this tournament, and cybersecurity researchers have documented a huge spike in fraudulent websites specifically designed to exploit fan enthusiasm around this event. Within that already chaotic landscape, it honestly makes complete sense that a piece as visually striking and culturally significant as Jimin's halftime show jersey would end up becoming yet another specific target for exactly this kind of counterfeiting activity. Let's spend a little more time thinking about the specific visual details that made Jimin's jersey such a standout piece within the broader wardrobe designed for this historic halftime show. The baseball-inspired cut combined with football styling elements created this interesting hybrid aesthetic that tied together multiple different sporting traditions into a single cohesive look, which honestly feels like a pretty clever design choice given the context of the performance itself. The prominent number 7 display gave the piece this immediately recognizable, almost collectible quality, similar to how a specific jersey number becomes associated with a particular athlete in traditional sports merchandising. And the combination of silver accessories, leather textures, and utility details helped tie Jimin's individual look into the broader visual language established across the rest of BTS's costuming for this specific show, while still allowing his particular piece to stand out as something uniquely his own within that larger group aesthetic. It's honestly not hard to understand why a piece with this level of thoughtful design work, created specifically for such a historic, once-in-a-lifetime performance moment, would generate this intense level of fan desire to own something similar. When you combine genuinely striking visual design with the historic significance of the actual event itself, the first ever FIFA World Cup final halftime show, featuring an unprecedented lineup of global music icons, you end up creating exactly the kind of conditions where a specific piece of merchandise becomes almost mythologized within fan culture, elevated well beyond just being a nice outfit into something approaching a genuine collector's item, a physical artifact connected to a moment that fans clearly recognize as historically significant within the broader story of BTS's career. Let's also think about what this whole situation might mean going forward, in terms of whether we might eventually see some kind of official retail version of this jersey design made available to fans through legitimate channels. It wouldn't be entirely unprecedented for a piece of custom stage where that generates this level of fan enthusiasm to eventually get adapted into some kind of officially licensed retail product down the line, whether that's through the artist's own official merchandise channels, through a collaboration with the original design studio, or through some other officially sanctioned partnership. Given just how much demand this specific piece has apparently generated, it wouldn't be surprising if there's eventually some kind of official pathway created for fans to legitimately purchase a version of this design, which would obviously help address the underlying counterfeiting problem far more effectively than any individual social media post ever could on its own. Let's take a step back and think about the bigger picture here, tying this whole jersey situation back into everything else we've discussed about this historic World Cup final halftime show appearance. This entire event has already generated an incredible amount of content and conversation, from the historic nature of BTS being part of the very first ever World Cup final halftime show, to their performance of Dynamite, to that wonderfully wholesome viral moment with IShowSpeed backstage, and now this story about Jimin's jersey becoming such a desired item that it spawned its own counterfeiting subplot. All of these different threads combine to paint this incredibly vivid picture of just how significant this single day turned out to be within the broader story of BTS's ongoing comeback era and Jimin's individual career trajectory specifically. Let's also acknowledge just how much this entire counterfeit jersey situation, as frustrating as it obviously is from the perspective of both the original designer and fans who might have unknowingly purchased knockoff versions, ultimately reinforces just how much genuine cultural impact this single performance has already had. Counterfeiters generally don't bother trying to replicate items that nobody actually wants. The fact that Jimin's specific jersey became significant enough to attract this kind of unauthorized reproduction activity is, in its own strange way, further evidence of just how much this particular look, and this particular performance moment more broadly, has resonated with people well beyond just the core BTS fandom. Let's also spend a moment talking about the responsibility that falls on us as fans and consumers to be mindful about where and how we're purchasing merchandise connected to moments like this. While it's completely understandable to want some kind of physical connection to a historic event like this World Cup halftime show performance, it's worth remembering that purchasing counterfeit merchandise, even unknowingly, ultimately ends up hurting the original creators and designers whose work is being copied without permission or compensation. Supporting official, legitimate channels whenever possible helps ensure that the actual artists and designers behind these creative works are properly credited and compensated for their contributions, rather than having their designs exploited by counterfeiters looking to profit off someone else's creative labor. Let's wrap up by recapping everything we've discussed today regarding this whole situation with Jimin's World Cup halftime show jersey. During BTS's historic appearance at the first ever FIFA World Cup final halftime show, Jimin wore a custom-designed white and red baseball-inspired jersey featuring the number 7, created specifically for this performance. The demand for this specific piece reportedly became so intense following the show that counterfeit versions began appearing for sale online, prompting the actual designer behind the original piece to reportedly step in personally, addressing the situation and sharing visual proof of what the authentic design actually looked like, in an effort to help protect fans from unknowingly purchasing unauthorized knockoff versions. This entire situation unfolded within the broader context of an already widespread counterfeiting problem plaguing this year's World Cup merchandise market more generally, with authorities across multiple countries reporting massive seizures of fake merchandise throughout this tournament cycle. This whole story, small as it might seem in comparison to the historic scale of the actual halftime show performance itself, really does say a lot about just how deeply and specifically engaged fans have become with every single detail connected to Jimin's recent activities. It's not enough anymore for fans to simply enjoy watching a performance play out on their screens. There's this intense desire to own a piece of that history, to have some tangible connection to a moment that clearly resonates on this deeply personal, meaningful level. And while the counterfeiting aspect of this story is obviously an unfortunate byproduct of that intense enthusiasm, it also serves as this genuinely striking testament to just how much cultural weight and desirability has become attached to literally everything connected to Jimin right now, down to the specific custom jersey he wore during this single historic performance. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you enjoyed this breakdown of everything happening around Jimin's World Cup halftime show jersey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update like this one in the future. Drop a comment down below letting me know what you thought about this whole situation, and if you've seen any of the counterfeit versions circulating online yourself, feel free to share what you noticed that helped tip you off that something wasn't quite right about them. As always, thank you for being here, thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next video.